Thank you all for joining us remotely. We're staff are here at the State Board's boardroom, and it looks like all of our assessment directors are comfortable in their own workspaces, which is okay. But we're grateful that you're able to join us today, and I expect, as usual, that we'll have information during our meeting that will be valuable to you and your teams as you work to support the students in your schools. My thought for this month just comes from feeling like sometimes our work moves along at a slower pace than what I would like it to do, and it's just good for me to be reminded that not to get frustrated with the speed, but to focus on the direction and to push through the times when it might feel like we want to quit or give up. So, all right, let's go to our next slide. Upcoming board meetings and activities are agenda items that are on board meeting agenda for March that are related to assessment accountability. On full board, on the Thursday meeting, there will be a report out on the Reports and Requirement Task Force. This group has been meeting. It's chaired by Chair Moss. There's a number of LEA representatives that participate in this task force. You might remember a few months ago we surveyed assessment directors on the issue of the KEEP assessment versus the cadence assessment for kindergarten students. So that's one of the topics that they've been discussing. Their overall focus, again, is to remove and reduce burdens on our LEAs. So their overall focus, I think, is something that all of you would support. In terms of decisions of how they'll do that, if you watch the full board, we'll get some insights on some of their initial recommendations that they've taken to the board. In the Standards and Assessment Committee, the K-12 English Language Arts standards are scheduled to come back before the board after their most recent 30-day public review period. This is important to assessment accountability because once those standards are adopted, we'll go through, it'll trigger work on our side around potentially new item development, potentially redesigning the blueprint for the ELA test, field testing, and operational field test of those items at some point in the future, and a renorming of our longitudinal data associated with that. So we're anxiously watching to see the progress on the adoption of these K-12 English language arts standards. Communication with both of our assessment vendors, and they're aware that the board is working on this. And even in our most recent contract amendment, we took some action, or had the board take some action related to that forthcoming board. All right, next slide. Cambian amendment. Last time we met, it provided more detail about the actual amendment proposals. Our board did consider those and approved both the Cambian and Pearson amendment contract amendments at their most recent board meeting. How this will impact you most directly will be beginning in the spring of 2024 for RISE assessments. Students who are receiving their instruction in a remote setting, you will now have the opportunity to administer the RISE assessment remotely. Also, for a much smaller subset of our students, but very important for them, is this text-to-speech for ELA passages. We'll keep you informed about that as we move forward. Again, this will be an accommodation for qualifying students, not something that's available to all students. So let's go to Pearson. Pearson's contract amendment was more substantial. It includes the functionality for providing the Utah Aspire Plus for remote proctoring for those students who've been receiving their instruction in a remote setting in 2024. They're choosing a different way to go about doing that. They'll incorporate Proctorio. I think I pronounced that right. The third-party vendor to help with that. There'll still be educators in our schools that will proctor the test, but they'll use their software to help make that operational. In addition, we know that we have had needs expressed from the field around better reporting functionality and also better administrative operations functionality with Utah Aspire Plus. Contract amendment includes several changes to bring about improvements in those areas. I've underlined this ADAM test management platform. This is a change that will be fairly significant because it will allow us to move off of PAN, which is currently the feedback we've received from many of you is that it's clunky and not very easy to use and doesn't provide you the resources you need to. So we'll be starting, I think, Kim and Elise, to talk about this early spring. As you wrap up the administration this year, we'll start to transition into this new test administration management platform, and we're excited about the promise of having improved functionality for you as test administrators. Okay, next slide, legislative session. I heard the other day as I was on my way to work, the Speaker of the House, Wilson, was on KSL, and somebody asked him, one of the reporters asked him about the session, and he said, this won't be an exact quote, it's pretty close. We have a bunch of overachievers up here. We're on course to have a record number of bills passed this year, all-time record. So there's lots of stuff happening up there that relates and affects education, but in terms of assessment and accountability, these are the two that probably have the most significance. House Bill 308 would remove the requirements for USB to publish letter grade or overall rating. That bill, I believe, is halfway through the process and received lots of positivity around it. I know bills similar to this have come before the legislature in the past and usually don't make it out of the Senate. The expectation that I'm hearing now is that this one will pass, and there's support for it up at the Capitol. House Bill 215, funding for teacher salaries and optional educational opportunities. It provides the option for a parent of a student who attends a private school to be able to access certain state tests. We have a board rule. Maybe 4 years ago we talked about that, and LEAs are required to have a local policy around students in your communities who are private or homeschool students being able to access state assessments. So that's not necessarily new. What would be different about this is for those students, there's actually a prohibition on the entity administering the assessments from reporting the results to anyone other than the program manager, the scholarship student, or the student's parent. So that creates some questions for me as we deal with our vendors who provide us files on behalf of the State Board of Education and trying to figure out how we will work through that. But it won't affect you in the field, other than I wanted you to be aware of that current restriction on data related to students who participate in this scholarship program, who attend a private school, who may end up in your school taking a test under the rule that we have in the state board already. But otherwise, considering we're on pace for a record number of bills to be passed, as far as assessment and accountability, surprisingly quiet. There may be something I've missed out there too, so if there's any of you who are worried or concerned about another piece of legislation, I'm going to pause for a minute. Maybe we can surface those, especially if it's something you'd like us to look into closer and provide more information in subsequent communications. So, are there any other bills related to assessment and accountability that anyone in today's meeting would like to discuss? So go ahead and unmute and jump in. Okay, if any thoughts come to you throughout the meeting, we can revisit this at the end of the meeting, this topic. So we'll go forward with general assessment information.
We do have a Nearpod collaborative board that we need some information on for our peer review process. So if everybody will please join the Nearpod, we do need a lot of information from you, and it would be really helpful to us if we could get that, because I usually do it on one slide, and so we can do that. We're going to talk a little bit about some general assessment information as we get close to the spring summative window. Some of this you've heard before, but we want to make sure that everyone's truly aware of everything that's going on. So that's one reason why we have multiple things. This is the questions we're going to ask you in the collaborative board. For our peer review process, one of the findings that has come out is the way that individual student reports are being shared. at the LEA level with parents. And there are some specific questions that we would like to have you to help us with. And also, as part of 53E 303, the Family Participation in Educational Process Rule, LEAs are required to have a parental involvement policy. And so if anyone would like to share those, would email me a link or a copy of them, we really need those for our peer review process, as some evidence of what's happening with that. Anne Michelle, do you want to add anything about that?
I would just say we're looking for the question from the Department of Education is how LEAs are helping the families of students who don't speak
We're going to
English.
talk about that next. It's just more about family plans.
Oh, and how ISRs are delivered to families. So that's the question we're trying to answer.
Okay. So the collaborative board questions that we have for you is, what is the process you have to provide individual student reports to parents who request the information in a language other than English? For example, they ask you to translate the information. What is your process for doing that? And then the other question we have for you is, what's your process for sharing individual student reports to parents who would need an accessible report, say a parent who has limited vision or something like that? Do you have a policy for that? And so that would be part of possibly your LEA policy. And I'm going to open the collaborative board, so feel free to go ahead and type your answer in. We're going to give you a couple minutes to answer that. And remember, don't forget, if you see something that it's exactly what you guys do, feel free to just click the little heart. You don't always have to type everything in. But, and if you have any suggestions that, I've just raised, like, oops, I haven't thought about it before. And you know what, this may be a weakness or something we need to start talking about, an idea that may have popped into your head that you might want to share with everyone. Again, this is more for us to be able to report to our peers at the federal level too, for our peer review, so that we can just say this is the process that's happening, and so we can tweak our procedures going forward as well. We don't have to say we're doing this perfectly. We just get to say, oh, this is what we need to do. So
yeah, I would add to that when we were looking at this particular question, we wanted to ask all of you what you're doing, so that to help us understand better and how we can support you as well. So your feedback and input is really valuable to us, and we're just really excited to learn about what's happening on the ground.
the big comment that's coming up is, do our vendors supply ISRs in languages other? And the answer to that is no, because as part of 53-303, the LEAs are actually required to provide the translation services. So we do not print them out. So that's one of the things that would happen with that. So it's up to you to translate the reports. And don't forget also the accessibility question as well, because that's just as critical too. Have you ever had, maybe some of you have had a parent come and say, I'm unable to read this or whatever this is. So we have tied the data to our SIS. Is this sufficient for the reports that don't need translated? Adding the data to your SIS system is fine, but what if somebody can't read it, or they can't understand, they can't read English? Unless you have an automatic translation service on your SIS system. And some schools are starting to develop, translation products for that. Okay. Some of the schools talk about reach out to staff with language to help translate the information to parents as well.
The majority of
Here's one that kind of combines both from a school. They have a parent that can't read English or Spanish, and they provided the parent with access to a site that will read the test aloud. So that would cover somebody with limited vision, as well as as somebody who also needed the translation service. So that would be something as well. Yeah, Jennifer, somebody's asking what's the site. So if the person who shared that, I don't like to give names. I can see your names, but nobody else can. But if you want to share that, the site that you're using, that would be really lovely, because that would also be something that we could, Anne Michelle, myself, and Elise could investigate as well as we answer our peer review questions. Oh, we have the accessibility thing on our website, so they have monitors. I'm not sure what the accessibility part is. I think people. Hey, it looks like everybody pretty much. I'm not seeing any new comments added in. Oh, got one. Okay. Thank you very much, you guys. This gives us somewhere to go and also some people to reach out and contact, because like I said, I know who you are. I can see your names. Everybody else can. So now I know some people. So thank you. That really helps us a lot. I really appreciate your help with this. Okay, couple things. These are slides that you saw last month, but we just want to remind you as we get closer, there are a lot of things as assessment directors, as you know, that are starting to kick into high gear. And so remember, we do have a task calendar posted on our website. We also have our resource, assessment director resource guide that gives you all the dates and the information that you need. So if anybody's new or goes, I wonder if it's on the calendar, look. And by the way, the task calendar, it's our first year we've launched it. If you find things that you're like, you know what, we have to do this every year and this month, would you just send me the feedback? Because we're happy to add it. This is a living document. Or if you see things that are on here that because we did this as an assessment staff going, here's all the things we know kind of happen. But if you find things on there that you're thinking, you know what, everyone needs to do this. This is the month we do it. Please send it to me and let us know, because we'd like to keep it as current as possible. And if you find things, like I said, that we don't do anymore, we may have missed that, and just let us know. Here's a quick reminder as we're getting ready to do assessment observations and some information about test administration training. People are really comfortable with, okay, testing ethics. We go in, we show them the PowerPoint, they sign, we know that they can't cheat, they can't, let kids have electronic devices. But the test administration training is as important as the testing ethics policy, and this means all statewide assessments. So if you are doing WIDA testing, if you're doing PEEP and KEEP, if you're doing Acadience, reading and math, if you're doing RISE, if you're doing Utah Aspire Plus, every person who is administering those tests has to have specific test administration training for those assessments. It isn't a general, we assume. And remember that teacher turnover is high. Proctor turnover is high. So there's a lot of assumptions being made that people are telling other people what they need to do. And we're seeing an increase in misadministration issues, people saying, hey, we did this and did that. So we just want to remind you that as we get close, we're at that point. We're in the middle of the WIDA window. The ACT test opens on March 7th. There's a lot of stuff going on. Make sure that everyone's aware. And going forward, you want to keep this in mind as well. Remember that all statewide assessments include anybody who's going to be proctoring a test to read the entire test administration manual, not just the scripts, not just, I'm just going to print this part out, which is fine. And by the way, I encourage people, print the scripts for people so if it's easier for them to read it, not have to access a computer, but do that. And that they have to read all the scripts provided in every TAM word for word for every single session of the test. It's not just the first day. It's not just the second day. And in makeups, you still have to do that. And I know with makeup testing, having been one of the people that had to give those, it gets really frustrating when you have everybody taking different sections of a test. But remember, what makes standardized tests standardized are the standardized instructions. So it's really, really important. Part of the test administration, I put that in that little gray box, is make sure the proctors understand how to access the systems. And some of you, it's really interesting to me. We sometimes get emergency emails from people like, I'm in and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And we're here and they're in another place. We can't really, we're trying to guide them while they actually have a room full of students trying to test. So part of that test administration process is make sure that the proctors know how to do it themselves, as well as how students access the system. And that includes, by the way, as Elise covered yesterday in RISE training, make sure the students pay attention to the instructions that you're giving, particularly when we say, is this really you on the test? There are students that have the same name, the same last name. Sometimes they, and we've had multiple issues over the years. It's been 9 years of this when I say that where kids have taken the wrong test. And then that creates all kinds of drama on your end and our end, and let's avoid that. Here's a really big one, especially with the new Spanish adaptive system for RISE. Make sure that to review and show all those enhancements to every test person who's going to be accessing that understands how that works. Don't just assume because you showed it to them in a TAMP. Make sure that they play with it on training tests so that everybody understands. We learned more from participating in UAT, practicing with the Spanish tests than we ever did just reading and getting the information back from Cambian. And here's a really big one too. Demonstrate to the teachers how to set up and access their reports so that they know what to look for. It's not just monitoring tests, but when they get the results back. For RISE in particular, they can set up their reports so they see exactly what they want to see, but they need to know how to do that so that you don't have as many questions. And remember that this year for UA Plus, we will have on-demand reports. Everyone will be able to see reports within 48 hours of completing a test. And yes, there is much rejoicing over that. And then another really quick thing that gets left off occasionally is reviewing your testing plan for student emergencies and computer issues. The number one question I get asked all the time is, do we really have to have 2 proctors in every single room? And we talk about the fact that 2 active proctors, they may not have to be in the room all the time, but you need to have a procedure set up so that if, say, a student takes ill, what's happening so that other person can come in, because the goal is to make this a positive experience for students. Remember, this is a student learning experience. We want to keep the students calm. And so if there's things happening, the adults need to understand that we need to keep things calm and organized. And that's why the 2 proctor rule. Understanding that sometimes that can be a heavy lift for people, but that's what you want to make sure. And make sure everybody's aware. Who do I call? Do I have that number in my cell phone if I need to? Or what's the procedure? Because the adult either has to pause the tests for the whole group, or they have to have a way to get you here so that you can take care of it. And I was really lucky in 9 years, in all the years I taught, 18 years of giving CR, I only had 1 kid ever throw up in a test. But I was glad that at my school, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do in contact, and it worked seamlessly. So, and yeah, I taught junior high, so pretty much it was, we kind of stopped testing for a while, if you want to know. Okay, other thing, assessment observations. We are conducting assessment observations. In fact, we did our first ones earlier this week. Thank you, North San Pete. North San Pete and Carbon have already started contacting me, and this morning I heard from Severe. Thank you very much, all of you guys who are in the CUES region. Remember, I have also sent out individual invitations to each of the assessment directors in all of the CUES region, which is LaJuab and Paiute, Severe, North and South San Pete, there's a bunch of them, and also to the charter schools that we have identified and selected to go and do observations with this year. And I need your responses back with the dates. In that email, it's very specific, the information I needed, the school, the dates, the times, because we need to coordinate our travel because we do have the locations just far enough away that we may need to stay overnight. And we try to coordinate so that we're not going to Sevier and then we come all the way home. And then the next day we have to drive down and go someplace else and then come all the way home. So we're trying to coordinate that as best as possible. So if you can give me dates, times, schools, contact information right away, that's really, really, really important. Remember, and this is the number one thing we want to bring out to everyone, this is not for compliance and this is not a teacher evaluation system. All this is we need to see how the test works. Particularly, we're looking at students who with accommodations and students with who are EL students. So we're trying to, especially with RISE, we want to see how the new Spanish adaptive system is working. We did the same thing, if you remember last year, with science. We want to make sure that there's information that we can give, and we take that information very seriously, and we discuss it as a team, and we look at what we do with training for it in the future. So it's a way for us to just say, how's it working, and what can we do better? These are the assessment observation windows, just so you're aware of when the windows are. And if you notice, we need to end our assessment observations on May 12th, because after that, we have too many other things that we're trying to get done as a section. And so that is the end of the window for us. So after that time, unless it would be a local location, we really can't assess after that. We have started our WIDA observations we're still doing. We know, like with carbon, one of the problems we have is we all have a conference that we all have to attend. And so some of the dates that they provided for us, we can't observe WIDA, but we can do everything else. So we're working on it. Another thing that we just want to highlight is our assessment literacy modules. We launched the first ones February 10th on Friday. And remember, these are the modules that we're doing. There are 10 of them. We are still holding our informational webinars for ADs and staff, and a lot of you attended that and asked some really good questions. You register for those in Midas. The Zoom link is provided in the Midas registration. And I apologize, when we start presenting, sometimes we don't see our email. We shut our emails off. So if you wait till the last minute to register and then email us with what's the Zoom link, sometimes we don't see those until afterwards. So go in and register for all of them. We will remind you and send the Zoom link out the day before. But if you can get that done quickly and go in and register for all the sections, we are not recording them because these are not intended for training purposes. It's just informational, so that you can just know what what's in our modules. And then the next morning, we launch them live. So 1 and 2 are already live. After the March 2nd, on March 3rd, we will launch 3 and 4. And it'll go all the way through I think it's mid-April. I'm trying to think of my head. I think we finished like mid-April, isn't it, Sid, somewhere in there? So that's when they are. And the links are activated. Here's your link when they're in there, both in Canvas for facilitated and/or independent learning. These are the links to the courses. The other thing is, like we told you, we have already given you the dates for next year's assessments. We were hoping that the assessment calendar would already be on our webpage. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of stuff happening downstairs. Our IT department we're behind on getting stuff updated on our website. Let's just put it that way. We are attaching this to our AD memo every week. So if you need the dates, it should be attached. And we're also, as promised last month, we're going to start giving you some dates for your trainings for the fall, and that's what's in here. First training, August 17th, is our new assessment director training. You can register in Midas. Please, please, please pass this information on to your district level staff or anybody directly involved in assessments. This training is not designed for teachers, but anybody else, please have them join us. It will be recorded. It is going to be posted on the assessment YouTube channel. And this year, in the past, we've always done new AD training first, and then we have our AD meeting. This year, we're flipping it. We'd like to, so that we have our assessment director meeting, and then you get a lunch, you get a half hour for lunch, then come back and join us on a new Zoom link, and we're going to do our new AD training. And it's going to be probably less of a fire hose of here's all the things, but building on the information that we already give you an assessment director in the first place. But it's really important, if you can start putting those dates on your calendar. We will be giving you a list. We still have to put a few ACT things. We're still waiting for a couple things. And we're going to publish a PDF list of all of the trainings that you can just pass on to anybody who needs to know where they are. So this is new AD training, August 17th. The Acadians reading and math trainings for next year are already posted for teachers as well as administrators. Yes, go ahead.
It doesn't say on the title, we should have given it to you, but this is Acadian's data analysis. So it's not test administration, it's data analysis, just to clarify.
Okay. And then the next one, here's your Acadians Math Essentials training, which is different than the data analysis, correct? Yeah. Okay. Jared, do you want to add anything? This is just the information I got, so.
Yeah, so I have the dates there and kind of the mode. And the course is set up already, but I haven't opened the registration until certain dates. So if you go to the course, you'll see when you can register, but it will be done through Midas. And those are available and set up.
So we wanted to provide you with dates as soon as possible.
And sorry,
Go
one
ahead.
other
Sure.
thing, because
Go
we
ahead.
get comments in the past, we've done this. So since we're offering the trainings that are via Zoom and virtual, we need to cut off the registration early enough that we can get materials to the participants. So this, for all of those trainings you can see, except for the section 6, but all the others, registration will stop 2 weeks prior to the actual date so that we can get addresses and get the workbook sent out to participants. So we've had in the past people wanting to, wait till the last moment to register, and we just can't do that in order to make it very efficient and effective in that training.
And we will be, as we said, sending all this information out in our weekly AD meetings and addressing and adding, and mentioning it again in future AD meetings as well until that time comes. So we just wanted to let you know, so people are starting to calendar dates, that we could give you some idea of when there will be trainings available. Assessment training dates for UTIPS, RISE, and Apple. I'll give a little preview to you that the high school benchmarks are going to be placed into UTIPS this coming up starting in August, and Elise is going to cover more of that in a few minutes. But we are going to be doing a UTIPS and high school benchmarks training on August 24th from 9 to 11. We are recording all of these trainings and posting them on YouTube so that they can be used, because we recognize that it's a really busy time of the year. Particularly, this training would be something that teachers might want to attend, but because of the time, we're trying to get times in. We're doing it live so we can get questions. We'll post it so that anybody who needs to have access, they can reach out to Elise as well. The RISE benchmark module and interim training will be September 13th. The Apple training will be September 26th. And that was everything about training. Any questions in the chat? Okay, you're up, Maureen.
All right, so since the spring summative assessments are right around the corner, I thought I'd just give a little refresh on core codes and assessment rostering, RISE, and the high school benchmarks, as well as Apple and Acadians are all rostered according to a student's course enrollments. So we do have all the core codes lists in one place. The website's on this slide. I'm sure you'll be able to get that through the Nearpod. Depending on you'll see the list. It'll have the core codes for each course that would qualify a student for an assessment. They are listed in order of priority, so the top of the list is going to be your higher priority courses, and then on down the list. So next slide. So if a student is enrolled in 2 courses, that would qualify them for the test. The higher priority course is going to be the one they roster with. So if you see this student is enrolled in a science and just a grade 6 homeroom. That science test is going to take priority, and that's the course they're going to roster with. We only roster a student with one teacher and one course, so you would expect to see that student rostered with their science teacher.
Which means, by the way, if you had planned on them taking the ELA RISE test and the ELA math test, unless that course code is there for their math and ELA test, they won't see the other tests. They will only see their science tests.
So it's always a good thing to check beforehand where your students are rostered, just so you know, so you can switch things around or clear up any sort of issues you might have with their courses.
And that always requires overnight. So if you don't look at your rosters the day of testing and you go in and there's a problem, that student cannot test until the next day.
At least.
In any system. And that's hopefully if all the data goes through correctly.
Yep,
So,
and the timing. So,
yeah, the timing and all the things.
so next slide, just extra reminders. If you have a student that's not rostering and their core code looks all right, you'll want to check your UTREX submission for any errors. You can do that in the Data Gateway on the UTREX overview page. Also, just continual reminder, please don't share student PII in emails, any communications, just an SSID is perfect. That also goes for if you're contacting help desk for any assessment, RISE, they can just use SSID as well. You don't need to give them any other information. And so please just keep it with SSIDs. We'll be good.
Yeah, we're seeing sometimes people are contacting the help desk via email and literally saying, this is my student, this is how old they are, they go to this school, this is their SID number, they have these accommodations, here's all, I mean, literally you could go down the checklist of all the PII and they've literally sent it out in email to a help desk, which you'd think would be secure, but it's not encrypted. So that's one of the things to remember, that teachers need to be reminded about that as well. And it tends to be, we're just going to say it, but yeah. And also, when you guys send us email threads, we're seeing a marked increase in PII from a teacher will say, email Christine, and there's PII in it. And then she doesn't catch it by accident and then sends it to us. And now we have an entire email thread where 5 different people have now seen all the PII and we get it and we have to go back through and redact every single place where the PII is in the thread. And then what's really funny is it comes back and everybody has unredacted. So yeah, PII.
And, you know, a lot of times a teacher will contact the help desk and they'll tell them to contact me anyway. So if you want to instruct your teachers, just contact you first, me first. It's probably going to be, your problem's probably going to be solved a little bit faster because sometimes they don't know specific Utah things. So maybe a good idea just to ask us first and then we can work with the help desk if we need to escalate it that far. As always, I am here for you. If you have any issues with rostering, get in touch and I'll help you out.
Okay, Tracy, you're up.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Go ahead. So I've been getting quite a few questions around how do we enter the accommodated code on our testing sessions? Is it any accommodation if it's written in a student's IEP? So I just wanted to clarify for you that the student's test only gets coded with accommodated if they have used an outlined allowable accommodation for that particular test. So keep in mind, every test is going to have different accommodations. So even if, let's say for RISE, for example, a student has in their IEP that it says that they need extra time, well, RISE is not a timed test. And so that would become like a UDL tool. It's not an actual accommodation. So the student may need that extra time to complete their test, but it's now a standard administration. Another one is like if any student is using any like the highlighter or even text to speech. So they have text to speech in their IEP, but it's a UDL tool where it's allowable. So it becomes just a standard test. So I linked here, if you go to the Rise and UA Plus TAM, and I gave you pages. In those TAMs will be the charts, and it will tell you, like, here's the list of UDL tools, and then it will say, here are the specific accommodations. If a student uses any of those specific accommodations, that's how you code it 201. We do report back to the federal government, by the way, our number of students that participate with accommodations. And some of our reporting disaggregated data is also looking at the proficiency of our students who participated with accommodations and proficiency without accommodations. So those are the things that we do look at. So reach out if you have any further questions, but hopefully that helps. This is just your friendly reminder around accommodation request forms. I've had quite a few start popping in the RISE system. Any student that needs scribe or speech to text, any assistive technology, we need to know if they're using Braille, and if there's an exceptional accommodation, something that's maybe not on that list or anything typical going on, but we need to think outside the box for that kiddo. You can send those exceptional accommodation request forms. In RISE, so UA Plus forms go to Jessica. So you find those on the website. Those ones go to Jessica. For RISE, you'll input those in the system. If a student is using dictation, so speech to text in place of human scribe, will you please have them fill out the scribe form? There's some additional boxes in that form to kind of help guide those requests. If they come in assistive technology, it's fine, but I usually don't get all the information I need. And so it's a lot of back and forth emails. But you can find the information in those manuals there that I linked on how to submit those request forms. Okay, perfect. DLM. So let's talk about some DLM stuff. Okay, so as of yesterday, 2 days ago, whenever I gave Kim slides, you can see in that little chart there, we've got still over 1,300 kids across ELA, math, and science that are still not rostered within the system. Some of those kiddos maybe should have been exited, but we still have a large number of students not getting rostered, and our window opens in about a month. So please go in and, oh, can you go back? Sorry. Please go in and get those rosters created. If you need to figure out like which students in my LEA are not rostered, you can go into Educator Portal and go under Reports and click on Data Extracts. And the data extract that you're going to look for is student roster and first contact survey status. And then within that, it'll pull up a CSV. And those columns that I've highlighted there, you can go in and filter and actually filter on who's not rostered and get a running list of your kiddos and schools that are not rostered. So that's one way you can look at that. But remember, rostering is happening all with you in the LEA. Next slide. If you need to know how to do it in the district coordinator Padlet, there is a TA document creating user accounts and rosters, and it'll walk you through how to create those rosters. So that's where you can find that information. And then next slide. So we are still working internally with our IT people on how it is that we get API through this automated rostering situation to recognize when a student's 1% flag has been removed. So we are still not exiting students that have that 1% flag removed. So if you go in and you're looking at students or teacher Sally says, Johnny's on this roster and he shouldn't be, and the student should have exited DLM, you can go in and manually exit that student. And again, in that TA document on the Padlet, we'll walk you through how to do that. So please feel free to manually exit students that shouldn't be in there. If they don't have the 1% flag, they should be going to RISE, UA Plus. You don't have to worry about that. So if they're sitting in DLM and they shouldn't, the only risk you have is just they land on a roster, but they should still be in our other systems. Okay, score reports. This has come up a couple times. So it is in the testing ethics policy, and we do have some rules around this that teachers and parents are supposed to be getting score reports, and they should be going home within 3 weeks of receiving those test scores. DLM score reports deliver down to Educator Portal in August. So if you have not figured out how to get score reports out to parents, you guys need to do that now. So we are months months past August. If you have something in place where you upload them to a system, you guys need to do that. DLM needs to be included in all of that stuff. Please, I am begging you to start working with your special ed departments and making sure that everybody's on the same page and someone is assigned every year in August to go in and pull these reports and get them dished out to teachers, parents, uploaded into whatever system you have. Teachers have access to a student score report, but not until they're rostered. So your teachers really are no good to help deliver those reports. So it's up to you as a district to get something in place. So please do that. Okay, next slide. There again are just a couple links to the Padlets that I have for teachers and for coordinators to kind of help walk you through different things, and there's some checklists in those. So I just wanted to share those again with you. Okay, any questions about DLM? What is the link for teachers to sign up? Oh, that's the assessment literacy. Kim, I don't know if you saw that in the chat.
I'm getting it. We're trying to find it.
Okay, so they're working on it.
Tracy?
Yeah.
Tracy, I have one quick question for you. So going back just a little bit, the speech to text instead of a scribe, that's when the student is dictating into a microphone for the platform. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And is that available for RISE and Utah Aspire Plus?
So it is only certain technologies or platforms will infiltrate the secure browser. So like a lot of people are using built-in Chromebook dictation or Google Docs, things like that will not go into the secure browser. So for RISE, we have a built-in dictation component. And so we no longer are doing like the second device. Oh, okay, we'll use a second device and then someone has to translate. So that's why that scribe request is the one to turn in for that. Because you have the option to click on the embedded and then the microphone just pops up into ELA and writing. And it's usually mostly writing that I get requests for. And then the student can just dictate directly in through there. So that's why I need you guys to fill out that scribe request form so we can figure out exactly what it is they're using.
Thank you, Tracy.
You are very welcome. Okay, so I presented to you guys last year, although we have a lot of new assessment directors. So in special education, we every year have what's called an SPP APR. So it's our special education state performance plan and then our annual performance reporting. So every year we submit that in February. And so February 1st, our state APR was submitted to the federal government. And then with that, we have some things that trickle down from that to LEAs, and we call it results-driven accountability. So what it is we have indicators that we have to report, either child and family outcomes or compliance requirements within IDA. And we look at where we stand in compliance with those indicators. If you want to move to the next slide, Kim. And that gets reported, and then we get a determination based upon that. So it's based upon like where we are in compliance. So why it's important for you guys, because I've already started receiving some emails and from some assessment directors. Your special ed people have started to reach out to you. So of the 17 indicators that we report to the Office of Special Education Programming, OSEP, are also the 17 indicators that your special ed department in your LEA receives results-driven accountability as well. So they are also held accountable for how your outcomes in your district are. So if you notice, we have a pretty good chunk in our world of assessment that reports back out of our 17 indicators. So we report our participation of students with disabilities in our statewide assessments, proficiency as well, and then a gap calculation. So go ahead and next slide. So just so you're aware, the state every year will, in June, we get our annual determination of where we stand in the eyes of OSEP on each indicator. So as a state right now, after last year's reporting, we still stood in a needs assistance space, which means that we have not met the threshold of compliance within our indicators. So that's where we kind of gear a lot of our technical assistance and our work in the special ed department is really around what happens with our annual determination. So go ahead to our next slide. Another thing to take note here is what's interesting is we report in our indicators our participation and proficiency on RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, and DLM, but part of our determination is also on NAEP. So our students with disabilities that are participating in NAEP and how they're scoring in comparison to the national NAEP is also a component of what goes into our determination. So it is really important that our students with disabilities in those NAEP schools that get chosen are actually participating, because that is a piece of the determination. So you can go to the next slide. So why is this important to you? So some of you have probably already had your special ed people reaching out to you, asking about data, different questions around the assessment, because this isn't the world that they live in. So I think it's just really important for you to understand what we do within this, so that when your special ed directors come to you for help, you have a little bit of an idea. So for indicator 3, we only report back grades 4, 8, and 10. So I've had some questions already come through asking about DLM students. And so you can help remind your special ed director, if you're looking at it, that we don't report all students. We're only looking at students with disabilities in our assessments in grades 4, grade 8, and grade 10. And then we have our 4 different indicators that we look at. Go ahead, next slide. So 3A is our participation rate of children with IEPs in our statewide assessments. So this includes both our alternate assessment and regular assessment students. And we only look at ELA and math. And so we just look at the percentage of our students who participated in assessment over those that are expected to test. So this is where parent opt-out and certain things can really make an impact on participation rate. So if we look at our state data, should be our next slide really quick, you can just see where we sit for this year with our participation rate. Our targets are always 95% participation. OSEP does not allow us to have a target anything less than that. And OSEP also does not allow us to take parent opt-out and not include it in our denominator. So you can see it since opt-out has come into play back in, what was it, 15, 14, we have never met target in our participation, but we do have a little bit of an increase. We still really struggle with our students with disabilities participating in Utah Aspire Plus. So that's an area to focus on. So go ahead, next slide, Kim. So our next indicator is around proficiency. So we then calculate the proficiency of our students with disabilities in our regular ed assessments. That would be RISE and Utah Aspire Plus. Again, reading and math in grades 4, 8, and 10. So of the students that participated and had a valid score, how many of our students with disabilities are proficient? So our next slide should give us our data so you can see. We've actually been increasing in our proficiency, which is awesome. We had 2 areas that we didn't increase. Oh no, we had 1 area. I don't know why grade 8 is highlighted red. That's my mistake. So we actually increased proficiency last year, and we had some 2% increases in our grade 4, which is awesome. But reading grade 10 did a little bit of a slip in proficiency. So we are doing some good things, and we are seeing our kiddos rebounding a little bit from COVID. So let's see, Brandon, do you have a list of the schools by these grades and their participation rates? So yes and no, Brandon. So there is a report that will come out with that. So that is a great question and something I need you to kind of help your special ed directors with is participation, but hang tight to that question because I will bring that up in a minute. Our next calculation that we look at is we look at the proficiency rate of our students who have participated in our alternate assessment DLM. So in previous years, they used to combine proficiency for both regular and alternate, but as of last year, we start separating that. So all of our kiddos that took DLM and received a valid score, how many of those were proficient? And if you move to the next slide, you can see our data. So we gained, some of these didn't come across. So all of our grades except for grade 4 increased their proficiency. So grade 4 ELA and grade 4 math actually decreased proficiency in DLM, which is kind of interesting. We usually see that it's our grade 8 and 10 that have a decrease. So grade 4 went down in proficiency.
Makes sense.
So
COVID.
okay, this is a new calculation as of last year. So OSEP has started requiring us to calculate the gap of our proficiency of our students with disabilities amongst all students in just our regular assessment. So the interesting part about this calculation is when we look at that, all students, our students with disabilities are also included in that. So we take our proficiency rate of our students with disabilities and we subtract that from all students to get that gap. So you kind of think of it as what we want to see happen with this indicator is we want to close the gap, right? So we want to see the gap of our proficiency rate start to decrease. So if we look at our data from last year to this year, which should be our next slide, you can see that we did not decrease our gap in reading grade 4, math grade 4, and math grade 8. We increased that gap, which is kind of interesting because our grade 4 students with disabilities for both reading and math actually increased in proficiency by around close to 2%, but our gap got bigger. So that means that all of our students, so our students that were not students with disabilities, actually increased their proficiency rate at a higher rate than our students with disabilities. So it was kind of a bummer to see that we made some pretty good gains with our students with disabilities and proficiency, but our gap did increase. So those are the indicators that get reported. And your LEA also has the same indicators that they have to answer to. So just a kind of a snapshot here, RDA letters, those results-driven accountability went out last week, and they were given their risk score. So LEAs based upon the indicator and where your LEA performed in comparison to the state and where our state targets, you receive a risk score of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How we look at this is we look at high risk as 3, 4, and 5. And those are areas that we ask your special ed directors to formulate some sort of maybe plan around or intervention. What are they going to do to try to improve that risk score? So go ahead, next one. So when we think about how do we look at moving proficiency, we really want to look at trends over time. Another thing is taking our students and putting them into our buckets, right? Like how are we performing? What's our percentage of students in our L1, L2, L3, and L4 buckets, right? What do those trends look like across districts, across schools? And so that's the information that you might be able to help your special ed directors with and pull some of that, what's happening in a certain school that they can lean on and leverage into other schools. The other thing that's really important, and this is where you guys can really come in to help, is the courses. What courses are students enrolled in? Do we have below grade level courses? And what can we do to help our special ed teachers and special ed directors understand the importance of our course enrollment, and especially with RISE? So just some things to think about there. Go ahead to the next slide. Again, there's links to the course codes. It's really important that our students with disabilities are enrolled in assessment triggering courses. So I think we're getting better with that, but we still do find that sometimes can be a missing link and they don't fully understand that. So go ahead, next slide. when we think about moving the needle for participation, so Brandon, this is kind of where you come in. Really what is important is really looking at those non-participation codes, right? And if you go to the next slide for me, Kim, we outline where we are with the state. So Brandon, what we don't do is we don't break this down by school for them. You should have all of this information you should be able to pull it in it's not Data Gateway anymore. Someone help me.
Tableau.
Tableau. In Tableau, you should be able to help disaggregate that, but here gives you a look of where our participation codes sat at the state level. What your districts will get in their reports is they will get a district level report that will outline for them where they landed in their non-participant codes. And if you can see kind of across the trend here, parent opt-out still sits pretty heavy at the state level, but I think when you dig into this at the LEA level, you might be surprised at what you find. What is alarming to me is if you look at that unknown, we still have a lot of test records that are not getting non-participation codes entered into test records. So when that is coming back to us, we have no way of determining why a student didn't participate. And that really doesn't help us or your special ed directors, right? Formulate a plan and look at where they can target interventions. If you look at ELA, so grade 10, if you look at that first line, absent, 20% of our non-participant students with disabilities didn't participate because they were absent. So my question is, are we not attempting to do makeup testing with Utah Aspire Plus? So something to think about, something to go back and talk about with your schools. If our student is not there on the day that we've scheduled it, what effort are we doing to get them tested? So definitely some trends that they can look at and see over the district. If you move to the next one, Kim has math. Can start to give you guys some ideas of where you can start digging deeper into your data. So again, here at the state level, parent opt-out, look at our 51% of our students with disabilities who did not participate have an unknown participation code in math grade 10. Like I don't know how to stress enough that it really is important to be coding these. And I don't know what support we can offer you guys. But we really need to make sure participation codes are getting entered. And if you can see, absence sits pretty high at our grade 10 as well, although math grade 8 sat pretty high for students with disabilities. I want to know what it is that we're doing to try to help make up those tests. Keep a running record for assessment of the efforts made to have, so should we? I think for you guys, personally, I think it's good to know, right? Like, what effort are our schools making, right, to make sure that all of our kids are getting tested, and especially for RISE, you guys have, what is it, a 6-week window, Kim, that you outlined to test kids in? 8-week window. And I know that Utah Aspire Plus, it's a little bit different, but
We have 8 weeks.
I would encourage you to just look at these trends amongst all students as well, not just students with disabilities. And what's going on there. So absenteeism is insane though. Constantly absent. So those high rates of 101 absent, do not test, maybe accurate.
Hey, Tracy,
Yeah.
you just repeat the question?
Yeah. So Brooke said, so 2022 absenteeism is insane. So tons of kids were constantly absent. Those high rates of 101, may be accurate. And they may be, but my question is to you, we're missing 6 weeks, 8 weeks of school, right? Those are pretty big testing windows. And our students with disabilities, right? Like if they're, 10 days in a row that we're missing, there's some other things that the school has to step in and do. So I know that we've got a lot of absent students, but my concern with Utah Aspire Plus is the effort being made to make up that testing, and maybe it's valid.
It may be time, Tracy, can I step in? To
Yeah.
look at your testing plans that you guys submit and talk to your schools. Because if we understand with it being a grade level test that everyone wants to test at the end of the window in the hopes that they gain as much instructional time as possible. but it may be something to start looking at, that if your absentee rates are extremely high, start earlier so you have more time to do makeup. Understanding you have our deepest sympathy about the disruption it causes in schools and trying to get everybody made up. But that may be one way to solve that, because if your testing window is literally the last week or the week before the close of a window, and you know you have a problem with students being absent multiple days in a row, you've already set that up for failure, that they're not going to be able to get their testing in. So maybe set your window 4 weeks and then work on it. It's almost impossible to solve the issue. We wish we could, but that may be something to think about. Maybe work with your special ed teams and talk about that.
Are these charts inside? So no, I created those, George. So what you can do is you can pull, right? You should be able to pull your non-participation codes in Tableau, right? And export that to an Excel sheet. But I do know, for example, one of the Utah Aspire Plus sessions that I was observing last year, and it was an accommodated session, the student got pulled out from school halfway through the session, and the teacher did comment to me that like the kid won't make up. Like, he left, that's it, they closed the test, and that's the end. So I definitely would ask you to kind of look at that, especially if you see that absent becomes a number one for you. And especially students with disabilities and our EL population, right? What are we doing to help support those? So you can just see here, these were guiding questions that I put out to your special ed directors. Things to think about, what to look at, when trying to move that needle, and what can we do around that stuff. Your special ed directors on Friday will get released a Canvas course where they will so you're actually kind of seeing this PowerPoint before them, by the way. So they'll get all this information on Friday. And then with that, they'll also have individual LEA reports that get uploaded. We contract with an outside entity to provide a lot of that. So they will have hundreds of pages of reports that cover the indicators. But for indicator 3, they'll be able to look at their LEA proficiency and participation over time. Will get reports where their LEAs will divide into them their percentage of buckets, right? Like, what was their percentage of students in grade 4 that were in L1, 2, 3, 4. So they will have a lot of that trend data that gets delivered to them. Can we get access to those same reports? So George, what you'll probably want to do is go to your special ed director. They have access to that through our secure special ed page. But they'll be able to have those. So if they come to you or you want to sit down and start looking at it with them, they should by Friday have all those reports. And then your special ed directors actually all through next week can sign up to do kind of like one-on-one sessions with myself and all the other indicators to kind of dig into that as well. So they're in the midst of that. They're working on their improvement plans. They can request student level data. We do have a few different business rules that go into which students actually get included in denominators and numerators for EdFacts. So let me know if you have questions around that. But it's just good for you guys to know that they're digging into assessment data, and any help that you guys can give them would be beneficial. Could report templates be created in Tableau's LAs could drop their data into and calculate these elements? So Brad, that's one of the things that I'm working with Malia. That is on our to-do list, is we really want to get a dashboard in Tableau put together with all this indicator stuff so that they can get into Tableau and dig in and get down to that student level data. It just takes time to create all of that. So if you have an interest to see that student level data, shoot me an email and Malia can pull that and we upload it into UPIPs for them. But you also should be able in Tableau, like you have DLM and RISE. So you should be able to put a students with disabilities filter on that and kind of help get to some of that too, I'm assuming. If not, we need to talk to Erin's team. But yes, the idea is to have a specific indicator 3 where it pulls all these business rules and they can get in and see all that. But they do have a ton of reports that will get delivered down to them. They'll get those on Friday. with all kinds of stuff. I mean, we take it and we break it down to disability classifications and environment, and they get a ton of data that comes to them, but it's more at a district level, not so much student level. So, and I think that was all I had. So anyway, thank you. And any support that you can give to them is great. And it's a great opportunity for, you and your special ed directors to become BFFs and forge a relationship over assessment data. So thanks.
Awesome. And as you ponder your relationship of, forging new BFFs and friendships, we're going to let you take a quick break before we get into WIDA. So 5-minute break, come back at 10:15. Get up and stretch. We'll be back soon.
All right, mics are hot. You're live.
Okay. I'm just going to dip into the chat. Good to go?
Yep, you're good.
All right, welcome back. Give everyone a chance to get settled. Happy Thursday morning. I'm already on my second donut, so it's looking to be a good day. I hope you all out there are on your second donut as well, whatever that donut in your life may be. All right, so WIDA Access. This was put out recently in an AD memo. We just wanted to follow up and make sure that everyone has had an opportunity to go through this guidance, and if there are any questions, make sure you throw those in the chat for us. But we do from time to time get questions about when new students enroll in an LEA, especially if they are new to Utah and they are, based on the home language survey, requiring screening. And so per our state's Title III ESSA plan, our consolidated state plan, schools have, LEAs have 10 school days to screen a student. So each year, basically what that means is you can have up to 10 school days to identify if that student does qualify for EL services. If that student qualifies for language services, then they do need to engage in access testing if it's before that 10-day window before the end of the test, right? So you do need to make attempts to give the student an opportunity to engage in access testing. But if the student enrolls the last 10 school days that access testing is available, you do not need to have the student take access since you technically have those 10 school days. So this year that cutoff date would be the 17th for enrollment. And then also just to know if the student transfers within state from another LEA, if they've already been identified, even during those last 10 days, if they have not taken access, check first, because they may have already completed the access test, but if they haven't completed it or even started it, we can get transfers. The student can be transferred in AMS to your LEA to complete or start and complete access testing. So again, you do have 10 school days to screen. Again, any questions, please let us know. Hopefully this gives you a really hard deadline. So, enrollment after this date, new to Utah, they don't need to take access. All right. So where are we? Gosh, we are over halfway through our testing. Yay! This is fantastic. So just remember that as you get students, as they're coming in still, you can add students into AMS, no zeros. You can continue to order materials, but that window is closing, okay? And the 3rd of next month is the last day for access testing. Please do note that the 13th, and I want to say that's a Friday the 13th, you know, shipping on a very auspicious day. I don't know what that means, but get it done, right? Because I'm not sure what will happen on Friday the 13th if we don't meet a deadline.
So you're saying ship before the deadline?
Yeah, well, that's the
It's a
last
Monday.
day. It has
It's
to
a
be-
Monday.
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday, so you're,
Okay, dang.
well, I had to look for you.
Okay, thank you. Kim has confirmed we won't have frogs raining from the sky then if shipping goes awry on the 13th. But please do note that date. That's the date that things do need to be postmarked by. And then the other one to be aware of coming up, have it on your radar, is your data validation. This is done by you in AMS. As we get closer, you will be receiving instructions. You will get an email from DRC with the process. It is all spelled out in the email that you will be receiving from DRC, but it is also in the AMS user manual that you can download in AMS. And again, if you have any questions, just reach out to us as we start to engage in these after testing activities. And one more reminder about shipping. You don't need to wait till the 13th to send stuff back. If you have things done and completed, send it back now. They'll get a jump on the scoring. And especially for grades 1, 2, and 3, those writing booklets, if you can send those back earlier, do, because that ensures no delays in scoring. Next, please. All right, and another friendly reminder, a point of celebration, actually. So as you know, last year we led the entire consortium in plagiarism instances, not the award in the top place that we were looking for, but this year, holy cow, thank you, LEAs. We have had only 3 instances so far this year. Count them, one hand, 1, 2, 3. That is it, which is incredible. We know that you all have been a huge part of this effort, so we want to say thank you. And it's working, so thank you. So as a reminder, this script, please be reading it. Again, adding that to that standardized procedure at the beginning of testing. And please, ADs, make sure that this is getting out to all the test administrators, okay? Think about your communication and ensuring that this script is shared and everyone does know that they need to be reading this to the students so they understand the purpose for the testing and also the expectations as they engage in the testing. But we're seeing efforts pay off. All right. Also, LEAs that are completing the alternate access field test should have received materials. You do not need to order any additional materials. So if you did not get enough, just complete what you have and return those. But please do note that that window is about a 2-month window. It is not just this week. I've had a couple LEAs think it was just to complete this week. Nope, that's actually a 4/17 on there. So you do have quite some time. So you can kind of break it up for the kiddos, give them an ample break between the different tests. But we really, really appreciate your consideration and participation in this because this is a huge need that we have for our students with disabilities. This will finally allow us to get an alternate screener, something that we very badly need. So again, huge thanks. Get what you have done, but you do not need to order anymore.
And then, again, we just really wanted to pause before we wrap things up to give you time to ask any questions, put them in the chat. We are always, as you know, here to answer any questions. You all are really good about reaching out to us. You're always really adamant about apologizing for taking up our time. Don't ever feel like you need to apologize because we are always here to support you. It's our job. So we wanted to give you a moment to take time, ask questions if you have them. And or send an email if you want it to be private. But no PII, just SSIDs. We are nearing the end of the window. Kim, did you want to add anything today?
No, I think that was everything. You covered it. We were just going to celebrate the 3 plagiarism letters that we had to send out. We're thrilled, like
Yes.
beyond over the moon. So
We're happy. We're eating donuts. We're celebrating with donuts today. I'm not seeing any questions. I feel like I normally get lots of questions, but that's all of me you have to listen to then. All right, happy Thursday.
Okay. Let's go through Acadians. So this is just a checklist of sorts as far as just knowing what to do with your Acadians data, broken up by either administrative or instructional uses. You can see that. That's just there more for informational. Next slide. So this, Kim shared earlier about the 23-24 trainings. So this is for this year. We have one focused on teachers, the classroom level data coming up on February 24th, next Friday from 2 to 4. And that's focusing on classroom level data specifically around middle of year. And then we also have one June 5th for administrators focusing on end of year data, and you can see the time there. And then Teresa wasn't able to be here, but here's a slide just as informational item about upcoming Acadians reading training specifically, and you have the course and the dates. And then there's also Canvas courses, and those are linked in the slide as well. If you have questions on that, you can reach out to Teresa, or Sid Carter is here and can respond if you have a question you want to throw in the chat. Next slide.
we had a question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the Midas course number for the June. I don't know that we have that yet in Midas. So as soon as we get that course number in Midas, we'll make sure to send that in the AD memo.
Yeah, we just created that this last week, thought about that training. We don't have the course quite ready. Next, thank you. So with all the trainings that we've been considering for Acadians reading and Acadians math, we've started to do a training that is data analysis for both reading and math, since the Acadians data, as far as how it's presented and how you access it, it can be very similar, and how you dive into that data is very similar. So there's another training that's available, and I just wondered what type of interest there is. And so the training that Teresa and I have been providing is usually about 2 hours in an afternoon for teachers or during the day for administrators. This training is pretty much all day, about 6 hours. It is one of the 3 workshops if you have people that want to become an Acadians math mentor. This would be something they would need. But I just wondered, is that type of workshop of interest? Or is it nicer just to have those quicker 2-hour data analysis looks rather than this all-day focus on data interpretation? So that's really what I'm asking in this slide. And I don't have a Nearpod or anything like that. If you have a preference you'd really like something like this, you could either email me or put it in the chat of this would be something that our LEA would be interested in. But I wanted to throw that question out there because I'm wanting to make sure I'm meeting the needs of the LEAs, but if this isn't something that's of interest, then I won't worry about it because it is a little more intensive. Another thing that Whitney, Grant, and myself have been working on, we've noticed as we've gone around and done trainings with Acadience Math, one of the tools that's available is called the response pattern analysis. It's connected to computation and to concepts and applications measures. And this tool allows teachers to be able to see what specific, so if you have a computation worksheet essentially and it has subtraction, it has addition, maybe multiplication, you get an overall score on that worksheet, but you really don't know exactly what the student's missing or what they are doing well at. So this response pattern analysis form can help teachers really analyze a student's computation worksheet or their concepts and applications to see, okay, is it really subtraction or is it addition or is it, what might I do to help instructionally help these students? Well, as we've kind of shared those in trainings, some of the feedback we've heard is it would be really nice to be able to have the standard Utah core standards connected with that to help teachers as they look at that form. So we created, and you can see in the slides, there's 3 links, one for first, second, and third grade.
Do you want me to open one?
Sure, if it's not too much
Is
trouble.
there one you like better?
No, that open them all at once. No, we'll go grade 1. Just do that one because that's basic. See if it works.
I don't know if it's will it show? It won't show.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. They
If you're
can
in
open them.
Nearpod, you can click on that link and it will open because I just did it. So.
Okay.
Well, hang on, I can try.
Oh, there you go. So they're created right now. They're created in Google Sheets, and so their draft form. I wanted to highlight that these are draft form. But what we've done to kind of help LEAs based on the feedback request is to include a column for the standards that the item aligns to, the question aligns to. And then also, oh, here we go. So if you start on we'll go to the far right. So the standards, so you have the skills assessed and then you have the connected standard in the Utah core standards. So we've included that to help teachers say, okay, if a student's needing add 0 or 1 to a 1-digit number, they can look at what standard that connects to and connect it to their instruction. Then what we've done also is on the left, so typically these are a sheet for BOY, one for MOY, and one for EOY. And you'd have 3 different ones throughout the year. And what we've tried to do here is just have one on one page so that teachers could use this tool and then be able to compare from administration, so BOY to MOY to EOY, and see how students are doing. Now, the reason those items don't change is because the test is, Acadience calls it stratified, where the same type of item is going to be in the same location throughout the test. So it's not going to be the exact same numbers used, but it's going to be the same type of item. Anyway, this is a sample of the form you're seeing now.
And what's really cool about this, can I just do a plug? This helps develop learning progressions.
Oh,
What you
nice.
guys just did was like open the door for helping teachers be able to identify learning progressions, which are essential for good formative assessment practice in the class. So way to go, Jared. You did
Yeah.
that.
I learned something from Kim when I used to work with her as a formative assessment person. Plus, I didn't even pay her to say that, so that but if we can go back to the slides now. So that's an example. It's in draft form. It's in Google Sheets. What we'd like to do ultimately is to create PDF versions and then have those posted on the UEN math website. We have some resources for Acadians Math posted there, and be able to share these out. So I have there Monday, February 27th as a date. If you have any feedback, requests, things that you'd like to see maybe in this forum, we'd love to hear it. You can just email me, and then we'll get those finalized. You can see also that we're also working on grades 4 through 6 to get those forms. We understand those aren't required for Acadians Math, but there are schools out there using Acadians Math in grades 4 through 6, and so we're going to do that as well. So anyway, share any feedback as it comes to you. Next. Okay, that's it from me.
And there was one question in the chat still. Brad asked about the contract with Amplify and when they will stop being allowed to administer Acadians readings. So the timeline for that, our contract with Amplify and the MClass platform currently ends June of 2024. So we have one more year on that contract. We're just starting the process of writing an RFP to look at new benchmark reading contracts for vendors. That process we're hoping to have done the end of this year, so we have a little bit of overlap time before our contract ends with the reading vendors. We won't know which vendors will be selected by our vendor selection window that will open this year, this spring. So we won't know for sure for the 23-24 school year who will be our vendor after 24 or vendors after 24. But we can talk more about what's available between all of the systems in future AD meetings before we move forward with the vendor selection process for our Acadians reading vendor.
Cool. Could I ask, how much feedback do you get on the Amplify MClass format in terms of technical issues and support?
As far as MClass and the technical issues, not a ton. And we meet regularly with the Amplify personnel and go over any of the concerns that have been called in. But if there are specific concerns, we'd love to hear more about them for sure. But we don't hear a lot of concern at this point with MClass platform.
Okay. I'm just curious that we experience a lot of issues in Davis District, and I don't know if that's our issue or if that's more reflective of what the rest of the state is encountering as well. Not the kind of technical support that we hope we would be able to get.
Okay, that's good feedback for us to hear. So we can talk for sure. And if other people online as well, if there are specific concerns or questions, we're happy to hear those and push our vendor to make sure that they're meeting the needs of everyone. Looks like Park City really hasn't had issues with Amplify.
And Greg, you hit a kind of maybe unintentionally hit an important part is the beginning of the selection process is where establishing the expectations with any vendor occurs. And if that's done successfully, it reduces the risks, doesn't eliminate them always. We have experience with vendors. That's the case, but we can put in place a good foundation up front of what expectations are in place and then solidify those in the language of the contract. I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is we do want to hear things. So for instance, our IT staff within this agency is establishing requirements around rostering that not all vendors right now meet those requirements, but those will be put in our RFP that will potentially either eliminate vendors from being able to submit for this or force them to make changes so that they're eligible to receive the contract. that they're pursuing under this with the State Board of Education.
And then Joan asked in the chat, is it possible that the assessment chosen after June of 24 will not be Acadians, or is it just a platform system? Our RFP will not be specific to any one assessment system. So it'll just make sure that it meets the requirements for rostering, our requirements for having a Lexile, our requirements for a Pathways of Progress, a growth score. Those will be the elements. So we call it Pathways of Progress because that's what the assessment does, but it'll be a growth score, a Lexile ability. Those are the things that we'll include in our RFP. So it won't be specific to one assessment. Salt Lake sounds like have had some issues with Amplify. That looks like Mandy. So we have kind of mixed feelings of systems that have worked well and not worked well between the LEAs. So that sounds like we probably could hear some feedback from people. If you've had issues with the Amplify system, that's something that we would love to hear back from, maybe some specifics. If you would email me, I'll type my email in the chat here. Yeah. My email in the chat for some specifics on Amplify specifically, and we can address those with the vendor for sure. This last year of our contract, year and a half we have.
Go ahead and go to the next slide. So as you heard earlier, our high school benchmarks are moving into the UTIPS platform as of August 2023, so for the upcoming school year. We're excited about this because it will be easier for students and teachers to access them. It will provide you with more standards-based reporting functionality. You'll be able to drill down a little bit easier to those item-specific things that were not previously available to you for the high school benchmarks. The high school benchmarks that will be available, all of the current testlets that are currently loaded into Pearson Access Next will be available. Plenty for ELA, math, and science, and there's also multiple testlets for each of these standards. And so in the fall, when I do the UTIPS training, there will be an added section on how to access the high school benchmarks and be able to administer them through the UTIPS platform.
Don't teachers have the ability to create their own clusters for science?
Yes, you can also create your own clusters. That will also be part of the training. It was part of the training this last fall as well. So if you have questions on that, you are welcome to refer back to it or go ahead and send me any questions through email. No, Alicia, a secure browser is not required for a UTIPS test. And yes, Laura, they would be available to online students because it's just used through really any internet browser. Can they be downloaded from UTIPS into another system? Brad, that is a great question.
Probably not.
Probably not. Like if you're looking into Schoology or something like that, they wouldn't be able to be moved due to copyright, but they would still be available there. Go ahead and go to the next slide. For RISE, there's just a couple of things that I wanted to go over that were exciting and kind of hot button communication. It was great to talk with you about this yesterday. The Spanish adaptive version for our training tests is scheduled to go live on February 21st, which is the Tuesday after President's Day. These will be available for math and science for summative test administration in the spring. When you go to add these, I did a whole section on the training yesterday, but in case you missed it, you will need to add it like you do an accommodation. It will be, it's a language option under the presentation in the student settings, and you will need to go in and select Spanish for the summative test administration. The training test works in a similar manner in that you would need to select Spanish prior to the student taking the training test. When the student is in the test, they will have the option to toggle between Spanish and English. The next slide actually shows the little button that it looks like. The screen content, as soon as they switch it, will switch back and forth from Spanish and English. It does take, I've taken a Spanish test and it takes about 3 seconds. So you have to wait a tiny bit, but it's not too bad to toggle between the two. And that little the little change language button that's up on the top becomes one of the global tools once you apply it to a student's account. And so that will only be available for students who you have gone in and applied that language accommodation. It is not going to appear for every single student. Not every student will be able to toggle back and forth between Spanish and English. Janice, to clarify, we need to enter the accommodation for every ELL student we have. No, not for every ELL student we have. Go ahead and go to the next slide. This is a set of guidelines or recommendations that we've created for who the Spanish adaptive test would be most beneficial for. So if you have students who fall into any of these categories, it would definitely be something to talk to the LEA service team as well as getting student and parent input. Megan, do you want to add anything with this?
So as you can see with the recommendations here, this is a determination that needs to be made by your language team. But it also, you have to consider the student and the parent's preference. And so the guidance says that for the first 4 bullets, the student needs to meet at least one of the following based on their most current WIDA access or screener scores. And so it's going to be based on the listening and reading domains. And that number would be a 2.5 or lower. So that for starters. And then also considering, since this is just Spanish, right, you have to consider their proficiency in academic Spanish language reading and listening, right? If they don't have academic Spanish language reading or listening skills, this may not be the appropriate accommodation for that student. So and this should be indicated again by the student and the parents. So all of these need to be considered when determining it. And once you do make the determination, is this the right accommodation for our student? You really need to make sure that those students have time to practice with the system so they can get used to it. They should not have their first exposure during the actual test. So making time to get students on the practice test. And ultimately, the student in the practice test might say when they're in there, they actually prefer it in English. You can leave it on, but you can say, listen, this is optional because it's just a toggle when it comes to RISE. But do note, this guidance pertains to Utah Aspire Plus as well, and that is not a toggle. So we do need to honor.
I just replied to an email about this topic for Utah Aspire Plus.
Yes.
We love the RISE system.
Yeah. Yeah, we love the toggle. Utah Aspire Plus, no toggles.
No toggle.
So just make sure that it's what the student really feels most comfortable with when testing. If they're not proficient in Spanish academic, we're not talking social language, academic, then it may not be the right accommodation.
We had some questions yesterday about students who are in dual language immersion classes. The same guidance applies. Just because a student is learning Spanish doesn't mean, a third grader learning Spanish for the first time probably doesn't have the academic vocabulary to complete a third grade level Spanish test. But that again, follow the guidance, because we get asked that like, oh, we'll just give this to all our DLI schools. That is not appropriate. It's based on the individual student. So
Megan, do you see the question?
Yes.
Okay.
So Alicia asked, students with higher access scores still have the option to use that feature if they want to? Yes, because ultimately these are our recommendations of when to really start those conversations, right? And our guidance. But again, it really is going to be something that you determine locally, right? If you and the parents and the students really deem this is the best accommodation for our student, then go ahead. Even if, that magic number of 2.5, it's higher. Maybe they're at a 2.6 and you still deem it's appropriate. Okay, right? you know your students, you know what's going to be best for those students. So.
And also just as a clarifier for this, it does provide the text to speech in Spanish as well. So it will read it to them in Spanish as well as English, depending on which way the toggle is set. And then it's for math and science specific, no ELA currently, and no plans that I am aware of.
Yeah, and that determination was made because, putting my ELA hat on, because of the questions pertaining to English grammar, punctuation, conventions of the English language embedded in those tests, especially with those editing tasks.
And just to verify, no instructions in Spanish, right, for language arts? Or, right, it doesn't read any of the direct or instructions, like going to read a passage and then it goes, no, it's all English.
Okay, for Utah Aspire Plus, I can go to the next one.
There was one other question about benchmarks, if Spanish Transadaptive.
No,
I put it in there.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
There are no Spanish adaptive tests for benchmarks or interims.
So for Utah Aspire Plus, we are quickly approaching our window as it opens March 6th. If you have not completed your infrastructure trials, you will want to do that in the coming weeks, and just ensure that all of your devices have the TestNav app available and that they will open and run the test appropriately for the students. You'll want to verify all of your enrollment and accommodations by the end of the month, and then get your sessions and everything ready to go by March 3rd so that we can begin administration there. As far as prep tools, we do have the infrastructure trial guide that is provided. You've got the question samplers and the TestNav tutorial. The question samplers are the ones that are content specific, but at the same time still allow the students to use the tools. The TestNav tutorial is great because it teaches the student how to use the tool, which is also really nice. Like, this is how you highlight. You can click here and drag here. And then for you as LEA level users, remember that the Brown training site is available to you so that you can test things out, create things, delete things without doing it in your live site with live data. And accommodations.
Okay, so just as a reminder, I've been getting a lot of emails around Utah Aspire Plus accommodations. Most of them can be answered in the test administration manual. They're pages 44 through 75 has a lot of detailed enabling instructions for those accommodations. I absolutely do not mind answering your emails, but I also know, me personally, if I can find out an answer without having to reach out to somebody, that's helpful. So it really, come one with that TAM and knowledge around accommodations. And then also on those enabling instructions, it'll guide you if you do need to put in a special request. As Tracy mentioned earlier, just email those to me and I will process those. I usually can get them done in a couple of days. Once I see that email pop up, I will send you back an email with another document confirming that it was approved or not approved. And usually, they are approved, but I'll give you that documentation so you can keep in the student's file. Okay. All right, the additional orders window opened up this week on February 13th. So please, if you have additional orders such as Braille, tactile graphics, large print, human reader companion books, be placing those orders. If you do have an error or anything, you reach out to me. I've had a couple of instances already happen this week. Just email me and I can contact Utah or Pearson and remedy that situation. See, yeah, I think that's really it for accommodations.
Moving into ACT. Okay, so step 4 preparation on the website, and this is where we're at. Our first window is opening just next month, and so shipment of materials is in process. I've gotten some emails about people who have had enrollment changes and things like that happening, and they want to know if they can make copies of materials, and please don't.
No.
contact ACT. There's a process in place. A lot of the times I respond like Jessica does the emails. Well, if you notice on this page of the user's guide, it'll tell you to do this. I've had a really nice set of feedback from someone who called the help desk and said they were very helpful. I actually just got an email that the 800 numbers for the help desk are down. However, the 319 state-specific number is still working. And so that state-specific number, they're very helpful. It's Utah only that gets to call that number. So give it a call if you have any questions about any shipments or things you're not seeing or when you're going to see them or any changes, because they will FedEx out materials right away to you to get them to you the next day. And according to yesterday's phone call at the ACT, no FedEx trucks have exploded with ACT materials this year. So the materials are going out just fine and making it. And so there's a lot of good news coming down, and we appreciate getting that news. So moving on, we've got ACT Now. If your students have not signed up onto this portion, please get them to sign up. This is where they sign up. This is where they answer questions about demographics. And gives information to ACT and to the about who's taking the test and all that other information. This is stuff that was approved here and those questions. So please get them to sign up on that. But also, this is where they're going to get their scores. This is where they're going to get their results. So if they're not signed up and logged in here on the day they go to take the test, they're not going to be able to log in either. They're not going to have an account to sign in on. So make sure they're on ACT Now and getting signed in on this non-test portion for all students. Moving on, we've got some reporting webinars coming up from ACT. These are in March and April. A lot of people have been asking questions about the online reporting system with success and how it works. So we have these two webinars that are going to cover trusted agent and system access, new contract reports with trends, student level data files, and how they're replacing those from going to a CSV format. Replaces fixed with 1050 file that probably dates back to the 80s. Who knows? That's an old file. Non-college reporting score letters are available through the system only. And this is for district level and school level people. And so make sure you get the word out about these. Session 1 and Session 2 are going to be pretty similar. However, Session 1 will probably get questions that will guide and change some of the stuff for Session 2. And so make sure you get registered at the ACT links that are included in this and get to those webinars, especially those for asking questions about how reporting works and some of the changes that have happened for this year. I'll be going over those. ACT you get a lot of emails, I'm sure, for ACT like I do. Their email address that no reply is being changed by February 17th, so really soon. A couple of days, tomorrow fast. Currently, the systems are set as the way the current system's been working. They've had some identified issues. Emails are getting blocked and not reaching the customer, and that's a problem, especially if it's a notification about something you need to do. And a lot of these, that domain has been blacklisted since it looked like phishing attempts, and they're not, right? And so, what do you need to do? Probably nothing. ACT a while back asked people to add the operations.act.org domain to allowed lists. If you did that, you're good to go. You'll still see the emails coming in. If you did not, you might want to add that to your allowed list or your white list so that you can get these important notifications that come from ACT. Helpful links, a technical guide. I get a lot of questions like Jessica does on ACT, and a lot of times the response is, well, if you look on the technical guide on page 17, or if you look at the user guide on page 27, or if you look at the schedule of events, and we spend a lot of time, I'll keep doing that. I'm happy to do it too. But a lot of times it's information that's pretty readily available. But here's some links to help out in case you need them. Next slide. Things you need to consider for ACT online administration: location. It's important. Your test dates and times. Your enrollments to be assigned locally. ACT ID codes must be accurate. Sessions built manually by the LEAs. And so if you ask me how to do that, I have no clue. I'll tell you right away. I'll probably refer to the user guide where it tells you step by step on how to do that. And then, of course, the instructions in the ACT test administration manuals. Make sure you have a plan in place. I've been able to go on ACT site visits last year and was so impressed just in the schools I was in with just anything that happened, people had a plan in place, and that, it makes a difference, like Kim mentioned at the beginning of today. So, is that the last slide? I don't remember. No, it's not. We're getting there.
Jessica.
Accommodations is pretty much passed, unless,
Yeah, so most of our windows have closed, unless you had a new student, some students transferred maybe to an alternative campus within your LEA. They've just created an IEP or 504, an English learner plan for a student, or there's a health emergency. Then those accommodations can still be requested. So probably very few and rare circumstances.
very few, but there's a nice little process in place, and ACT is happy to make those accommodations, of course. Just make sure you submit that qualified exception form by March 3rd and get that going. So contact information for ACT, yeah, that 800 number's not working today, but maybe it'll be working soon. Use the 319 number that's on the PA Next site if you have any questions about accommodations. Schmoop, we love Schmoop. Do you love Schmoop? Schmoop's been doing a great job. We've had some really positive feedback from the LEAs. I've been able to sit in with some of the meetings that Schmoop has had with some of your people in terms of setting it up at the different schools. What we know is every chance a kid has to take an ACT test prep test to actually practice, it's going to improve their scores. And Schmoop gives them an opportunity to do that like 4 or 5 times throughout the entire year. And so I'd make them more comfortable, make them feel more confident. And it actually starts in 8th grade. You know that? 8th grade, your kids can get a Schmoop account and start getting some practice early. You can actually, if you have those days where you're looking for something to do because you're doing remediation with students that need it, you could have ACT press test contest, see who can get the higher score. Have some fun with it, do whatever. But Schmoop's a great little program to help do that, and it's free. And Schmoop will work really well with your LEAs in terms of how you access that through which programs. There's an example of boot camp, Stay Calm and Study On. We've got these nice little reminders on there. It's still not too late if you're not using Schmoop to get involved with this and use this for some test prep before you give the actual test, especially if you're in test window 2. Get some tests done early, take advantage of it. Moving on, there's a training video bank for Utah that they put together. You know, how to do everything, nice little clicks. How do you get the magic word? How do you create a classroom? How do students join the class? All those questions, nice little watch lists and PDFs in terms of how to do that. So there's some links to help you out if you want to see how some of that works. And then another list of resources just in terms of landing page, training requests. Schmoop has a set number of trainings they can do every year, and they never fill it. They never do as many as they can do. So, and they're very helpful really in terms of getting out there and helping you and your people get to use the system and make it so it's flexible and usable for you. So take advantage of it. If you have any questions on any of that, you can contact me, but I'll put you in contact with Autumn. Autumn Ackerman is amazing. She does a great job handling Schmoop here in Utah, and it's just fantastic to work with. I've heard nothing but positive feedback from the LEAs to work with her. So they're eager to get your call and get working with you if you're looking to get some more ACT prep that does look like it works really well for our students in Utah. So last slide.
There we go. 99 slides in an hour, 2 hours and 10 minutes. Or 2 hours because we took a 10-minute break. So, Darren?
I don't have anything else to add other than let's just circle back to the full group and see if there are any questions from the field or topics they would like us to provide more information on either today or in a future communication or even at our next city meeting.
And we're happy to flip the Nearpod back if anybody needs to see something. So just ask. We'll just have everybody close their eyes so it doesn't make you sick.
Well, I'll just close the way I feel like we should always close, and that's with gratitude. Thankful for the staff here at USBE, Emily putting the meeting together, Amy sending information out prior to the meeting, and for each of you and the work you're doing in your communities to support public education. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.